Hi everyone, welcome back to our weekly paycheck budget with me. We're budgeting out the second paycheck of January 2023. So if you're new to the channel, my name is Jackie. Welcome. I do what's called a zero-based budgeting method or an every dollar budgeting method. I was introduced to this from Dave Ramsey, and I've developed a budget template in Excel, and I've kind of evolved it over the years, basically just having things on there that I thought was helpful to track and things like that. So it is for sale. The link is down below. It's on Etsy. So if you want to pick one up, you can, but you can also do a budget however you want to do. So whatever your budgeting form is, whether that's a piece of paper, Google document, Excel, or even every dollar app, whatever it might be, then jump on that and let's budget out the second paycheck of January. So we actually do our budget every single week because we get paid every Friday. So I really encourage you not just to do a monthly budget but to actually budget or cash flow plan every single paycheck. You might have some set things that are the same every week, but then you might need to start putting money aside for different bills, and this really helps you start managing your money a little bit better so that you can get some of that money for the bills before it's due and you're not paying it late, or you're not paying it just on time. So that's kind of what's really helped us from living paycheck to paycheck to actually kind of feel like we were a little bit ahead of, but we also have way more control over our money. The other type of budget that I use is geared towards dividing my budget into categories, and that's called the 60% solution. So I'll talk about that a little bit, but first let's talk about the income. In my budget, I actually put the amount before taxes and deductions because that's how much money we actually made, and then I do account for all of those within the budget so I can see where is the money going and how are we spending it. So if you're not really sure how yours is, all you have to do is go on your pay stub and it will be all broken down for you. So my husband gets paid $32 an hour. His base pay is 40 hours a week, and then sometimes they get overtime. For this particular paycheck, they did have the holiday, the New Year holiday, so he had an extra 8 hours. Normally overtime for him is time and a half, which would be $48 an hour, but this was holiday pay, so they paid him at his base 32. But I still lined it up with the overtime because it was the extra amount. So his base pay for the 13th paycheck was $1,280, and then the extra 8 of holiday pay was $256. So my husband is a pipe fitter, journeyman. He's in construction, so their hours can change. They have some months with no overtime, and then they have some months where they could even be doing 50 hours, or they'll do 50 hours. Sometimes they're even doing 60 hours a week. So it's definitely a lot of extra work for him. So we have what's called an irregular income. So that's why it's even more important for us to definitely budget out every month and every paycheck, because it changes. Also, myself, I work for Amazon part-time, and I work a flex schedule. So my scheduled time is 4 hours, but a lot of times we end up doing 5 hours because we're busy, or if we're slow, we're only going to do 3 hours. So far, we haven't gotten to the slow period, so all my time has basically been pretty much like 4.5 to 5 hours is what I've been seeing a lot of. So again, that's kind of that irregular income. So for the 13th, I did have $222.74. I make $15.50 an hour. Now, because I am part-time, I don't really have any way to get overtime hours. I can pick up additional hours. They call this VET, voluntary extra time, and they're always sending me notifications every day like, hey, here's some extra shifts. So if I wanted to pick up an extra shift, I could. Unfortunately, you can't just add on to your time. So days that we do 4 hours, would be nice if I could just stay an extra hour anyways, but you can't. You have to pick up a whole nother shift, which could be 3, 4, or 5 hours. I haven't picked up any extra shifts this year. Last year, or the other peak season I did, I picked up a lot of extra shifts, and for currently I'm scheduled 4 days a week, but you could be scheduled for 5 or 6 days a week, so you could be closer to 36 hours if you wanted to with Amazon. I chose the lower amount of hours because I didn't want to be committed to more hours and have everything at the household kind of fall apart, because I still manage, that's my first priority, is managing the household. But anyway, so for the week we had $1,750.74, so a little bit more than last week, just because I did have a little more hours at Amazon. Next week, though, you're going to see Ricky's going to have a big chunk coming in. I mentioned this last week. He left, so he had his main employer that he was with for, I think, almost 5 years. And I think, yeah, like he was there for 5 years. But anyway, so he left there and he went to a new place to make more money and to be closer to the house. And then they were basically running out of work at that place. So he ended up going back to the other place, but he got to keep the extra money. And now he is going to be at he's at a location that is closer to the house from where he was before. So this big lump sum right here is he actually is cashing out his PTO time that he had earned with the other employer. So this, I have a feeling, is going to get taxed like crazy, but we won't know. So join me next week. We'll see how that ends up being. When we get down to our budget categories, like I mentioned, we're trying to align with the categories of the 60% solution. So the idea is you have 5 categories in your budget. You have your retirement, your long-term savings or debt payoff if you're still paying off debt, your committed monthly expenses, your short-term savings or like irregular bills or yearly bills, irregular type spending, and then you have your fun category. So you have 5 categories. Your biggest category is going to be 60% of your budget, and that's going to be your monthly, your committed monthly expenses, and this will include taxes, health insurance, those type of deductions. But this category may or may not include just necessities, right? So if you're committed to certain expenses, they're going to be in this category, and you don't want that category to go over 60% if you can. The other 4 categories, in theory, you want to divide up evenly 10% to each category. We are making a lot more money than we ever have. We used to make only like $30,000 a year, and now we're on track to make like $100,000 this year. So for us, 10% of that would be like $10,000 in each of those categories. That's a little high, and we still have some debt that we want to focus on. So we're doing 7% in 3 categories: the retirement, the short term, and the fun. So about $7,000 for the year in those categories, and then the rest is going to debt payoff, and that is roughly going to be about 18%. So we got our committed monthly expenses. The average for the year is going to be around 61%, so 1% high, but not too bad. And then our debt, we're going to try to do it's going to be about 18%. Now this fluctuates again month to month and paycheck to paycheck. So we're not necessarily doing those set percentages every single time. We're trying to keep the 7% categories at 7% every month. And then what fluctuates is the committed monthly expenses. Those are the expenses, right? But that percentage of the budget changes based on the pay, and then whatever's left basically goes to savings. So to start off with the budget, we have 7% for retirement. So we're doing it between my husband's 401k and my Roth IRA. He had his last pay, he'll have one more paycheck with the old employer that was already set up at 5%. With the new employer, back to the original employer, he'll have to wait a month before he can start that again. So what we're doing is we'll just be putting that into the Roth IRA. So for the 13th, it was $76.80 was 5% of his income in his overtime, so that's automatically in his 401k. And then $50 goes into my Roth IRA. I have these 3 as an automatic deposit, and then the rest, this I'll end up setting up a new automatic thing, depending on how that goes. I color code on my budget. If it's blue, that means the money was saved or invested. The money is not like totally gone. If it's orange, that means the money is in the bank waiting to either come out or be spent or whatever it might be. And if it's red, that's just what I'm projecting ahead. If it's black, that means that was the set number or the money was spent and it's gone. So this $50, I'm going to change to blue now because that just came out of the bank account. So now these are officially in our retirement accounts. For this particular paycheck, we are not putting anything towards the debt. We're going to do that on the next 2 paychecks. And if you notice from what I originally budgeted, $1,784, we're actually going to be able to do more than that because, well, possibly more than that because some of the taxes were lower than I originally budgeted. However, next week, like I mentioned last week, it might be higher than I expected. So we'll have to see how the next week plays out. So then for our taxes, you can see it's pretty similar to last week's taxes. They're a little bit higher again because I made a little bit more at Amazon. So, you know, make a little more money, give a little more taxes out. Same thing with the health insurance. We will not have that for a month. The next part of our committed monthly expenses that I have is grouped together, anything related to the house. So we were able to put $389.81 in savings to start putting that money aside for our mortgage payment that is due on February 1st. So again, if it's blue, it means all or part of it is in savings. So for our groceries, last week I budgeted $120. If you remember, or if you missed it last week, I actually spent less than $120. So I was able to put $28.29 in the savings account. So that's why I made it blue, because part of that was actually saved. Now this week when I went shopping, we actually spent over the $120. We spent $130.41. But we're still not too far over that $28. So basically that extra, $10 will come out of that $28 we saved from last week. So we'll still have about $18 saved from last week. So still doing good on the grocery budget. Now I did get the official bill for our electricity. I budgeted $60 just because that's around where it was last year at this time, but it was quite a bit higher. It was $98.80. And I think part of that is we actually have the temperature set in the house a little bit warmer than we did last year. And that's just because we have tortoises. And even though they have their heat lights and their UVB lights and all that stuff, the surrounding temperature does also affect how much those heat up. So we didn't want them to get too cold, so we're spending a little bit more, I think, because the heating's coming on a little bit more. But I need to keep an eye on that, because one time our bill was kind of high for electricity, and that just meant our solar panel, something was going on with the solar panel, so they had to come out and deal with that. So I'll keep an eye on that, but I think it's just because we're using more. So I adjusted this to the $98.80. That is in savings, again, because it's due on the 1st. And so some of you might say, well, why are you putting this in savings? So the bill money I put in savings until basically that paycheck that it's due, because I want to earn as much interest as I can in our savings account. And right now, I think our savings account is like 3% interest. It's like really high. So of course I want to earn as much as I can, even if the money's only in there a week, that's fine. I'm earning a little bit at that time. So this week I do need to pull out the truck payment because that will be coming out on the 21st. So I'm going to get that pulled out of savings. The other thing, if it's a category that we spent less than I budgeted, like the groceries, I'm putting it in savings because, again, I can use it a little bit throughout the month, or I can save it up for a bigger type purchase within that category later on in the year. So we'll see. The other bill I was able to put money aside for is the internet, which is $102.20. This might be a little bit higher. I noticed last month it was like 105 something. So I just need to keep it. I might need to adjust that. We'll see. And then the insurance, these is for our full coverage on our truck, our car, and our teardrop trailer. So it's $281.67. This did go up quite a bit from last year. Last year I think we paid like $223, so it went up to like $280 this year. We do have a motorcycle, but we pay that yearly, so that's $70 we pay in August. So our August budget will be a little bit higher. One thing I did want to make note of too here was the mortgage. So our mortgage and principal payment is a set amount, but then we have property tax and homeowners insurance. So it was, I think, $1,435 and some change. So it did go up to $48 and some change, so a few dollars, but it's actually not bad. So usually your mortgage company will adjust that payment on a yearly basis based on the property taxes or your homeowner's insurance. So a few dollars actually wasn't too bad. So I did adjust that across my yearly budget as well. The other category is our gas. So if you notice here, again, I budgeted $100 last week, so it's blue because some of it was saved. So we didn't spend the full 100. So let me come and see what we had left over. We had $38.80 left over from last week, and so we'll have to see how the rest of this week goes. So far we're still within the $100, but we'll see if we need to pull anything from that 38 or if we stay under 100. We'll have to see that again. All right, and then we were able to put the money for the teardrop payment aside. That's $117.18. Most of these bills are due on the 1st of February. We have our Netflix, which is due on the 26th of January, and then our truck, which is the 21st of January. But everything else is kind of next month. So you can see we're a few weeks ahead on some of the bill money, which is good. Well, I mentioned this last week that I brought back the chore money for my daughters so they can earn their age. So my oldest is 11, she'll be 12 in February, and then my youngest is 8, she'll be 9 in August. So last week they did do their chores and they earned their money. And then what I'm doing is whatever they earn on that week, I'm dividing it in half. So I put half of it in their savings account, and then half of it is in their other account that they can spend. So they can kind of save up a little bit at a time and then make, purchases on whatever it wants. And then on the other savings, I think what we might do is, let them, whatever they save up and they don't spend like in a year or two, convert it to like a long-term savings so they can start saving for like their first car or things like that. So this week is not over yet, so they still have time to earn their chore money. So we'll see. My youngest daughter, she's so eager though. She's like, I want to do more. I'm like, well, you can do more, but you only can make this much. Now if they don't do any, well then they don't earn it, but I'm still going to put the money in to savings for them for future things. So that was basically our committed monthly expenses. This one, I think for this month we're looking at 58%, so less than 61. And that's just because we're going to have that big chunk of payment from Ricky. But again, that could change if the taxes go higher. So we'll see. My next category of the basically I consider this more like yearly bills or irregular spending because I'm not really saving too much of it. But we had adjusted some of the money around. So for the personal care, I had mentioned that we have our 2 chiropractor, my husband's chiropractor monthly thing and mine, and then I thought I owed my doctor $15 for blood work. It turned out I actually owed $75. So I adjusted that, and then I did end up a telecommute doctor's appointment because I wouldn't have insurance for a few months, so I did that. So that was like a $15 copay, and then I filled my prescription, which was $5. So I had to add that to my personal care part of the budget, and then we still need to pay for my daughter's dentist. I think we owe like $107. So what we did was we didn't take that from a different category. We just took it from another portion of that category. So we took it from the household project type funding. So originally we were going to have more money to put into savings to start saving for our next project. This month though, it looks like we're only going to be able to save maybe $61. So this first one here, I have that orange because we're still paying. I still have to pay some of that money. This 53 from this week is basically, I'm considering that gone. And then our last category, fun category. So I mentioned this, that we're trying to only eat fast food like once a week. We're trying to stick to like the cheap dollar menu type items. So we'll see. So far, we did not go eat out this weekend, which was pretty good. Usually we do. So last week, I don't know if you remember, we spent like roughly half of it. We did like the dollar menu, I think, at McDonald's, so we had the other half. So I did end up getting tacos for Taco Tuesday at Taco Bell, so we ended up spending the full $30, so that's fine. Drinks, last week we spent $16, so we had 4 we put in savings, and that's the same thing with this week. We did $16, we have 4 we put in savings, so we'll basically keep this one blue for now. And then this week for Ricky's energy drinks, $12, so that's what we spent. So these are orange because the money was spent on the credit card. I just haven't made that payment yet. So if I look on the side of my template here, I keep track on this card tab, I keep track of what we're spending on the credit card because I pay it off every week. If you see the ones that are orange, that just means it's charged onto the card, but it's still pending, so I can't really make that payment on that yet. So what I do is every Friday I log on there, and everything that's cleared, I go ahead and pay it. Now if you look here, so Ricky did spend $7.85 of the 30, and that's because he had orientation yesterday, and so he was like, I'm gonna buy snacks and stuff, so he just bought some snacks and everything at the gas station, so whatever. Also, if you notice here, Ricky spent his $12 on NOS, but then he also spent about 90 something on, he needed to get a few new tools and things like that, so I added that to his money. If it was tools or something that was for the house, I would have put it up here for the maintenance, but because this is for work, anything Ricky buys that's specifically for work, you know, they buy certain, you know, they get work shirts, they get work boots, but if they go over, I think, a certain amount, then he pays the difference, and then they do get a credit back for pants. But if he's buying tools and stuff specific for work, I line it up with his name here, just because that way I can also keep track of it for tax purposes if we're able to write any of that off. So what I had to do, because obviously I only had $12 from this paycheck, I didn't have $111. So what I did was I added that for next week. So next week we'll be able to pay off what he spent for the tools, and that extra spending came out of the vacation savings. So again, we're keeping it within the fund category, but you can always adjust that around, and again, it's 7%. Now, like I mentioned, zero-based budgeting, that just means I've told every dollar what to do, where to go, so at the bottom of my budget it has a 0. So my budget template kind of does that math for me, so that really does help out. So yeah, so that's the second week of January 2023. Things are looking good. We're somewhat staying on track. We had 2 categories, you know, Ricky's spending and the personal care spending that was off a little bit, but we were able to still adjust it within the main category of the budget. So we just have to be careful moving forward that we don't do any overspending, because then if we run out of money in that category, where does it come from? Well, it would probably have to come from the extra debt payoff, but we don't want to be overspending. We already feel like that should be enough money to do whatever we want to do. But I hope your budget's coming along nicely. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye.